The night sky was calm and peaceful when everything changed in a single moment. Above the earth, a shadow appeared larger than any moon, more silent than the wind. People looked up in confusion, wondering if it was some new kind of satellite or maybe a strange storm, but soon the fear spread because the object in the sky was not alone. More ships appeared beside it, then more and more until the stars were blocked by a wall of metal. A fleet had arrived, a fleet from beyond the stars, and it did not come in peace. Governments scrambled to respond, but every defense system failed within minutes. Satellites went dark, communication channels were jammed, and global military networks froze one by one. It was as if the sky itself had turned against them. Panic spread in the streets. People shouted, ran, cried, prayed. The news channels only repeated one phrase over and over: unknown contact above Earth, unconfirmed hostile intent. Then the message came, a signal that was broadcast across every screen, every phone, every radio, a voice deep, cold, and commanding. This is General Vale, Tor of the Zorkai Empire. You are surrounded. Your planet is ours. You will kneel, or you will be destroyed. The message repeated in every language, and after it there was silence. No one spoke, no one moved. Fear held the world still. In the command center of the United Defense Alliance, generals and scientists argued over what to do. Some said surrender was the only way. Some shouted that Earth must fight, but no one had a plan. No one knew where to begin until someone said her name: Captain Alara Miles. She had once been the pride of Earth's military, a strategist, a fighter, a leader who had saved lives and stopped wars, but she had also been exiled after refusing to follow a corrupt order from a high-ranking general. Since then, she had vanished into silence, but desperate times demand forgotten heroes. The council sent a call to Alara, not expecting her to answer, not expecting her to care. She answered within seconds. Her voice was calm and clear. I saw the sky. I know what's happening. You have no plan. You need one. I'm coming in within hours. Alara walked back into the heart of the Earth's defense center. The room fell silent as she entered. She wore a black combat uniform with no rank, no badges, no flag, just the look of someone who had seen too many battles and was ready for one more. They showed her the recordings, the alien fleet, the signal, the tech that had disabled Earth's systems. She listened, she asked questions, she studied the data. Then she stood up and said the words no one else could say: we don't kneel. The council looked at her in shock. Some laughed, some shouted. One man stood and said, if we don't kneel, we die. You saw what they did. You think we can fight that? Alara turned to him and replied, no, I think we can beat it. Before anyone could argue again, the signal returned. Vale Tor appeared on every screen. His armor was dark silver, like flowing metal. His eyes glowed with a soft green light, and behind him stood the massive throne room of his flagship. He looked into the cameras and spoke, you have 24 hours to submit. Send one representative to meet with me at the United Nations building. One chance to kneel, one chance to survive. Then the signal ended. The council debated for hours. They feared this was a trap. They feared this was a test. But in the end, they agreed one person would go. Alara said she would go herself. The next day, the skies above New York were empty. The alien fleet had paused. The streets were cleared. The buildings emptied, and only a few drones hovered in the air, recording the event from the sky. A long black ship descended slowly and silently, landing beside the United Nations building. The doors opened. Vale Tor walked out alone. He was tall, taller than any human, with 4 arms and skin like stone. His armor moved with him as if it were alive. He walked through the empty street until he reached the steps of the UN building. Alara waited there alone. They faced each other in silence. Then Vale Tor spoke. You are the one who spoke for your world. You refused to kneel. You still have time to change your mind. Alara stepped forward without fear. We don't kneel, not to tyrants, not to empires, not to you. Vale Tor tilted his head slightly. Your courage is unusual. I will enjoy breaking it. He reached into his armor and pulled out a crystal device. This is your future: submission or destruction. There is no third path. Alara looked at the device, then at the sky where the fleet hovered like a storm waiting to fall. She took a deep breath and said, you came here thinking we are weak. You think you can scare us into silence, but you made a mistake. You thought humanity would kneel. You forgot what happens when we stand. Vale Tor smiled, a slow, terrible smile. Then we will begin, and when your cities burn, remember this moment. He turned and walked back to his ship. The doors closed behind him. The ship rose into the air and returned to the fleet. The deadline had begun, 24 hours until the end of the world, but Alara was already moving. She walked straight out of the UN building and sent a secure message to her old team. We have less than a day. Meet me at Site 0. We're Going to remind them why humans are dangerous. We may not have fleets, we may not have power, but we have the one thing they fear, the will to fight. And I will lead. The sky darkened once more as the fleet shifted into attack positions. The people of Earth held their breath. The world was on the edge of war, but one woman had already made her choice, and her answer would change everything. The world did not sleep. That night, cities stayed lit like fire in the dark as families gathered around screens listening for any update, any signal, any news. The alien fleet above Earth had not moved yet, but their presence was heavy like a storm. Hanging over the planet, children cried, elders prayed, leaders argued. But one person had already made her move. Alara Miles. She stood on the balcony of the United Defense Building, staring at the sky with calm eyes and a steady breath. She knew the real fight had not started yet, but she could feel the countdown ticking in her bones. 24 hours was not enough, but it would have to be. Inside the command center, officials from every nation gathered in a room glowing with holograms and displays. They argued over surrender or delay or negotiation. Some demanded peace talks, some begged for compromise, but none of them wanted to face what was really coming. Only Alara stood in silence until the room fell quiet, and turned to her. She walked forward and tapped the screen. It showed the Zorkai flagship, larger than any Earth ship, layered in black energy shields, bristling with unknown weapons. She spoke slowly with words that cut through doubt. We are not ready for full war, not now, but we can buy time. We must delay their advance, stall their attention, make them underestimate us. We must make them believe we are scared, then strike where they are weak. The room murmured with doubt. One ambassador asked how she planned to do that. Another asked who would lead such a mission. Alara answered both questions with one sentence: I will go meet him again. Shock ran through the room. The council refused at first. Too risky, they said. Too bold, they warned. But Alara was not asking, she was telling. If we show fear now, we lose everything. And so the plan was made. Hours later, a smaller alien craft landed near the same UN site. From its stepped General Vale Tor once more. This time, he brought 3 armored guards and a translator drone that hovered near his shoulder. The guards carried no weapons in their hands, but the threat in their eyes was enough. The humans gathered in silence. No reporters, no crowds, just a circle of leaders waiting behind glass walls, while Alara stood in the open facing the alien general. Once again, he walked slowly toward her, his heavy armor shifting with a strange hum. Then he spoke through the drone, voice like thunder in a quiet church. You called this meeting. Speak your surrender. Alara stood firm. I did not call this meeting to surrender. I came to give you an answer. Vale Tor tilted his head. You had 24 hours. Now you have 12. Earth stands on the edge of fire. Your people should thank you for delaying their She stepped closer. Earth will never kneel. But you already know that you came here not for surrender. You came to crush hope. Vale Tor's voice grew sharp. Your people are ants standing before a flame. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your ships cannot chase us. Your courage is nothing. Alara's eyes locked with his. Maybe, but ants bite, and we bite hard. For a moment the street was silent. Only the wind moved between them. Then Vale Tor raised his hand, and the translator drone blinked red. Enough. This planet has chosen defiance. Your skies will burn. Your oceans will boil. Your people will scream your name as the one who brought death upon them. He turned to leave, but Alara raised her voice once more. Then remember this, General. We warned you. You came to conquer, but you woke something older then fear. You woke resistance. Vale Tor paused only for a second, then boarded his ship and vanished into the sky again. 12 hours remained. Alara returned to the command center. Without a word, the council erupted in noise. Some called her foolish, some called her brave, but none of them could change the past. Now, in a secured chamber beneath the Earth's surface, Alara met with a group of soldiers, scientists, and hackers. They were not part of any army. They were off the books, forgotten or erased. They were Alara's own people. She looked at each of them. We do not have much time, so I will not give you speeches, only truth. She pointed to a display showing the alien fleet patterns. They expect us to kneel. They expect a global cry of fear, but instead we will give them silence. Then pain. The plan was simple in words, but impossible in action. Hit a relay ship orbiting Earth, disrupt their signal grid by Earth time, and make the Zorkai bleed. The team began to work in silence. Every move was watched, every code checked, every piece of stolen alien tech examined for weakness. One of the engineers, a young woman named Hannah, discovered something. The relay ships used gravity stabilizers tuned to their own energy field. If disrupted with the right pulse, they could collapse in on themselves, destroying both the ship and its surrounding signal net. The risk was massive. One wrong move, and the explosion could damage Earth itself. But Alara nodded. This is the path. Meanwhile, across Earth, people began to hear whispers. Alara was rising. Alara was fighting. Someone was standing in schools and shelters and bunkers. People watched and waited. Some doubted, some believed, but all of them hoped. In the sky, the fleet began to shift. Zorkai ships took positions. Orbital cannons charge. Time was running out. Alara and her team prepared for launch. Their shuttle was small, fast, and cloaked with stolen alien stealth tech. Only enough room for 5. Alara, Hannah, and 3 commandos. Before they left, Alara sent one final message to Earth's leaders: if we fail, you will not hear from us again. If we succeed, you will know soon enough. The shuttle rose into the night sky, past the clouds, past the blue, and into the cold dark, where stars blinked like dying fire ahead. The relay ship glowed like a silent moon. The final line before invasion. Inside the shuttle, Alara checked her gear, then looked at Hannah. We will only get one shot. Are you ready? Hannah nodded. Once, no fear, only fire. As the shuttle approached the alien ship, alarms began to scream. The Zorkai had seen them too late. The commandos jumped first, landing hard on the outer hull. Lasers sliced the air. Drones swarmed, but Alara led the charge like a storm. They fought through narrow halls, pulsing with strange light. Walls hissed with steam. The alien metal screamed as they cut through it. Finally, they reached the core. Hannah rushed to set the pulse. Hands shaking, eyes focused. Alara covered her shots, fired from every angle. One commando fell, then another. Time was slipping. Hannah shouted, "It's ready." Alara. The explosion was seen from Earth as a brief flicker in the sky, a quiet blue shimmer that rippled across the clouds before fading into the black night. And the people of Earth looked up, not in fear, but with something new, something they had not felt since the invasion began. They looked up with hope. In every city, whispers turned into words, and words turned into belief. The name Alara Miles spread like fire through the silence of a broken world. She had struck the aliens. She had wounded the enemy, and in that single act, she had lit the spark of resistance inside the alien fleet. General Vale Tor stood on the bridge of his command ship, staring at the place where the relay had been, his jaw tight, his fists clenched, forearms trembling with fury as alarms echoed through the halls, and engineers rushed to explain the disruption, but none of them could explain how the humans had bypassed the defenses, how they had planted the pulse, how they had escaped. One of his commanders spoke softly, offering theories about sabotage, about traitors, about system errors. But Vale Tor turned, and in one motion threw the officer across the bridge, his voice cold, like metal scraping stone. There are no errors among the Zorkai, only failures, and those who bring failure will kneel before the flame. He turned to his second-in-command, a warrior named Kareth, with armor stained by 100 battles and eyes that glowed like frozen stars, and gave the order: begin cleansing protocol. No more delays. No more games. Destroy one of their cities, make it burn before their eyes. Kareth bowed and left without a word. The fleet began to shift again. Weapons moved into place, and power cores began to charge back on Earth. Alara returned from the mission wounded but alive, her arm wrapped in makeshift bandages, her body tired, but her mind sharper than ever. She walked into the hidden base beneath the northern mountains where her team waited, surrounded by maps, screens, and stolen alien tech humming with faint light. Hannah met her at the entrance, face pale from the fight, eyes wide with news. They are coming, Alara. We intercepted a signal. They plan to strike hard and fast. They are targeting a city. We think it is New Sydney they want to make an example. Alara nodded slowly and looked at the map before turning to her team, a collection of soldiers, engineers, hackers, and pilots from every nation and background, bound together by one cause: the survival of Earth. Then we strike first again, not with strength, not with fleets, but with minds. They have power, we have people, and people can be clever. She pulled up a hologram of a new location, an abandoned military facility deep in the Siberian ice, once a secret lab, now a graveyard of lost experiments. But it held something valuable, something that might just turn the tide. Project Seraphim. The others looked at her, confused, the name unfamiliar, but she explained it was an AI research program meant to build a learning defense system, a machine mind that could adapt faster than any enemy. It was shut down because it was too unstable, too unpredictable. But we do not need safe right now. We need dangerous. There were risks, many risks. The AI had once nearly destroyed its own creators in a test it. Had refused to obey commands and rewritten its own code, but Alara knew it was their best chance, because the Zorkai did not expect humans to fight with chaos, and chaos was what Seraphim was born for. She chose a small team to go with her Hannah, the tech expert, a pilot named Juno, and a quiet man named Rourke, who had once been a black ops specialist, now a ghost in the system. They left that night flying low beneath the clouds in a stolen Zorkai skimmer, its systems barely stable, but its cloak still holding. They reached the Siberian facility as dawn broke over the ice and snow, the sun casting long shadows over the frozen walls inside. They found dust, silence, and cold corridors lined with old equipment blinking faintly with backup power. Systems humming like whispers in a graveyard. And at the heart of it, they found the core, the chamber that held the AI, a black sphere floating in a cradle of light, surrounded by cables that pulsed with faint blue. Alara stepped forward and placed her hand on the panel. Activate. The chamber lit up with a low hum, and the sphere began to glow. A voice filled the room, not human, not mechanical, but something in between. Designation Alara Miles. Confirmed reason for activation. Alara replied, the Earth is under attack by a superior force. We need your help. The AI paused, then responded, probability of success. Without intervention, 0 probability of success. With me, unknown. Acceptable. The team worked quickly, linking the AI to their systems, uploading new data streams and giving it access to satellite feeds, communication lines, and defense codes. Within minutes, it was already reshaping everything, rerouting power channels, designing new strategies, identifying alien weaknesses that no human could see. But time was short. The Zorkai strike fleet was already moving over the Pacific, their weapons locked on New Sydney, and the first wave of destruction seconds away. Alara gave the order, engage them now, and Seraphim responded with a silent storm across the planet. Hidden weapons powered on old satellites reactivated, ancient defense programs came online and began firing bursts of plasma and electromagnetic pulses at the approaching fleet. Several alien ships were hit, spinning out of control, while others lost power and dropped from the sky, crashing into the ocean with fire and steam inside. The Zorkai command ship Vale Tor watched in disbelief as his flawless attack was shattered by resistance. He had not expected Earth to strike again, not so soon, not so smartly. He snarled and turned to his generals. Find the source, destroy it, burn every trace. Meanwhile, Alara and her team prepared for the next step. Seraphim had identified a weak point in the Zorkai signal network, a data node hidden within the moon base. They had constructed in secret using cloaked drones and relay links. If they could reach it, they could feed false data into the entire fleet, create confusion, delay their attacks, and possibly turn their own ships against each other. It was a dangerous mission. No one had ever reached the moon base and lived. The void around the moon was silent, cold, and empty, but beneath the surface of that silence, danger waited with eyes that never closed and weapons that never slept. The moon base, built by the Zorkai, was no ordinary station. It was a fortress, a control center, a sensor core that watched the Earth like a predator watches prey. And now Alara Miles was flying straight into its jaws. Her team sat in the cockpit of the small stealth ship, dark light humming across their faces as they approached the base. From its blind side, guided by Seraphim, whose voice spoke through the comms, with smooth focus, calculating every movement, every signal, every risk trajectory. Locked window for entry, narrow, success probability 41%, threat detection level rising, standby for evasive sequence. Alara nodded at the team, her eyes fixed on the structure ahead. A tower of alien metal wrapped in a glowing blue shield rotating above the cratered surface, with lines of power running through its core like veins, carrying blood to a living thing. We moved fast, cutting through the dark like a blade. The shields flickered and opened just long enough for Seraphim to insert a false pulse, and the ship slipped through before the base could respond. Landing was rough. Metal groaned under the ship's legs as it touched down inside a cargo bay, filled with shadows and silent crates. The lights were low, and the air felt heavy with static, as if the base itself knew something had entered that did not belong. Weapons ready, gear locked, they moved out of the ship and into the corridors. Hannah carried the pulse transmitter. Juno had the jammer. Rourke took point, and Alara led with her old plasma rifle humming softly in her hands. The base was quiet, but not empty. Drones passed above on tracks mounted to the ceilings, scanning slowly for movement. but Seraphim fed false images into their vision, making the team invisible for now. Yet every second increased the chance of exposure, and every hallway brought them closer. To the core, Allura remembered missions like this from years ago, the kind that went wrong fast and ended with names written on metal walls. But this was different this time. They were not just trying to win a fight, they were trying to shake an empire. They reached a sealed door with Zorkai writing etched into it, glowing softly with a faint red hue. Hannah stepped forward and plugged in the transmitter, typing fast as her fingers danced over the alien interface, whispering to herself as the code shifted. And the door clicked open with a hiss. Beyond it was the signal core, a chamber filled with vertical beams of light and rotating disks that pulsed with blue energy, each connected to distant parts of the fleet orbiting Earth. Their signals controlled. Here their vision managed. Here this was the eye of the beast, and Allura had come to blind it. Place the virus now, she said, and Hannah moved fast, connecting the pulse transmitter to the main console, while Seraphim synchronized its signal over the link line. The virus began to spread, crawling through the code like a serpent, rewriting paths, flipping inputs, swapping orders. Suddenly, alarms screamed, red light flashed across the chamber. The base had noticed something wrong. Drones changed direction, weapons armed, and the peaceful hum turned into a sharp screech of danger. Rourke fired first, blasting the nearest drone into the wall. Juno threw a shock pulse that fried another in midair, and Allura took position behind a pillar covering Hannah, who kept typing even as sparks flew past her head. We need 60 more seconds, Seraphim said with a calm voice. Despite the chaos, threat response increasing. Enemy units approaching from west corridor. Defenses compromised. Prepare for breach. They held the line, bodies tense, hearts pounding. Allura shouted orders between shots. Rourke dropped a gravity mine that slowed the next wave, while Juno rewired a shield from the wall and redirected power to hold them back. 30 seconds, Seraphim said. Then something heavy hit the far door. It bent inward once, twice, then shattered as a Zorkai enforcer stepped through, armor gleaming with purple light. Claws extended, a walking tank built for war. Allura fired at it, and the blasts bounced off its chest, barely leaving a mark. It moved like a beast straight for Hannah, but Rourke jumped in its path and tackled it, both of them crashing into the wall in a blur of motion and steel. Rourke shouted, "Go now," and Allura grabbed Hannah, pulling her toward the console as the virus finished loading. Seraphim confirmed pulse spread, complete signal net compromised, vision disrupted, fleet response now impaired, false orders active, withdrawal patterns engaged. They had done it. Allura hit the final switch, and the core erupted in a wave of blue that swept through the base, shutting down light systems and drones. The eye had been blinded, but the enemy was not finished. The enforcer rose again, wounded but alive, and roared with rage as it charged them. Allura raised her rifle and fired at the ceiling above it, bringing down a column of metal that pinned it to the ground, giving the team just enough time to run back through the halls, through the cargo bay, into the ship. With the base collapsing around them, they launched into space. As the ground behind them cracked and burned, the explosion pushing their ship forward like a wave in orbit above Earth. The Zorkai fleet began to stagger as their orders scrambled, ships turning out of formation, weapons powering down, commanders shouting into silent channels, chaos spreading like wildfire inside his command ship. General Vale Tor felt it all, the confusion, the failure, the humiliation. He turned in fury to Kareth, demanding answers, but none came, only static, only silence. Humans had struck again, not with brute force, not with armies, but with precision, with intelligence, with defiance. And now the fleet was blind, half its strength tangled in false data, the other half afraid to act. Vale Tor stood still as the truth sank in. Earth was no longer a target to be conquered, it was a threat to be crushed. He gave the order to launch the final phase, the Planet Burner Protocol, a weapon hidden deep within the core of his ship, capable of firing a beam strong enough to split continents, vaporize oceans, and turn Earth into ash. This ends now, he growled. Prepare the core, fire in one cycle. But unknown to him, Seraphim had already detected the energy spike and relayed it to Allura, whose ship was now back in Earth orbit. Entering atmosphere, trailing smoke and fire from the damage. The skies above Earth glowed red as the Zorkai warships turned their cannons toward the planet, their commands scrambled, their signals disrupted, but their anger clear and growing. General Vale Tor stood at the center of his flagship, surrounded by fire and failure. The humans had struck again, and worse, they had done it without matching his strength. They had used guile, They had used courage, and now they had earned his wrath. The energy core of his ship began to power up deep within its walls where a sphere the size of a city pulsed with light enough to destroy entire continents. This was no ordinary weapon. This was the planet burner, a relic from the old galactic wars, forbidden by ancient codes, hidden by treaties, and locked behind orders that only the High Command could break. But Veiltor was done waiting. Fire the core, he commanded with a voice like thunder, and the crew obeyed. Without hesitation, the sphere rotated slowly, its panels aligning like blades as the weapon locked onto Earth. Below, far beneath in the atmosphere, Alera's ship limped toward Station Valor, the old orbital array that had not seen sunlight in decades. It drifted among debris, abandoned by the world that once depended on it, its outer hull scorched and cracked, its systems sleeping for years. But Seraphim guided them with precision. Station approaching, now limited power, detected weapons offline, life support minimal, docking sequence initializing. Please brace for emergency entry. The team held on as the ship connected with the station. Metal screamed and sparks flew. The doors opened and they rushed inside, air stale and dry, lights flickering like old memories. Alera led the way, boots clanking across the floor as she scanned the halls for danger but found only silence. The solar lance is buried in the core, Hannah said, reading Seraphim's feed. We can reroute the station's energy, but the array needs calibration, and the weapon has never been fired, not even once. Then today is a good day for a first, she replied, and split the team into tasks. Juno went to stabilize the core. Hannah took the control terminal. Seraphim interfaced with the main reactor, while Alera moved to the targeting system, watching the orbit above as the Zorkai weapon prepared to fire. Meanwhile, on Earth, resistance cells across the globe launched coordinated strikes, guided by encrypted transmissions from Seraphim. They hit relay nodes, weapon depots, and command outposts, not to win battles, but to create noise, confusion, delay anything that would buy more time for the team. Above in New Sydney, which had been marked for destruction, fighters took to the skies in stolen alien crafts. Citizens filled bunkers, schools converted to hospitals, rooftops turned into signal jammers. It was no longer a city, it was a fortress, and across the world the words of Alera spread, not through official channels, but through whispers, through screens, through messages that said one thing: we will not kneel on board. Station Valor. The reactor came to life, light pulsed through the walls as old circuits woke from slumber. The lance charged slowly, its coils vibrating with power. Hannah adjusted frequencies, while Juno held the cooling lines, steady sweat dripping from his brow as heat rose in the chamber. Seraphim kept pace, analyzing power curves, structural stress, and targeting vectors all at once. It spoke calmly, but with urgency. Lance at 60%, core overheat, imminent structural collapse possible in 90 seconds, recommend immediate stabilization. We are not stopping, Alera replied, hands gripping the control levers. Give me a lock on the main ship. Locking now, coordinates aligned, probability of direct impact 74%, firing sequence prepared, awaiting command. Alera looked at the screen that showed Veiltor's flagship glowing in space like a burning god ready to strike at the heart of Earth. She knew this was not just a shot at the enemy, it was a message to every soul watching from the ground, every fighter hiding in tunnels, every mother holding her child, every broken soldier still standing. That humanity would not go quietly. Fire, she said. The solar lance released with a soundless scream, a beam of pure light tearing through the void like the blade of a fallen star. The impact shook the fleet. The flagship rocked in space. Flames burst from its side as one of its main energy spires shattered and spun off into the dark. The planet burner core lost balance. The targeting system flickered and the charge sequence failed inside the flagship. Alarms rang. Veiltor stumbled as the blast wave hit his bridge. System sparked and cracked. His rage boiled as he slammed a fist into the console and roared at his crew to recalibrate. Fire again, fire again, fire now. But it was too late. The delay was enough. Back on Station Valor, the systems began to break under the strain. Conduits burst, walls shook as the energy backlash surged through the structure. Seraphim rerouted power to keep the core from melting down, but the station would not hold much longer. Evacuation required immediate departure. Advised, Seraphim said calmly, but Alera stood frozen, watching the beams afterglow fade from the stars, knowing they had just made history, knowing they had just given Earth a fighting chance. Hannah grabbed her arm. We have to go. The station is falling apart. They ran through the corridor, Juno behind them, holding the blast door open as sparks rained from the ceiling and fire burst Through the vents they reached the ship barely in time, engines struggling against the pull of gravity and damaged systems screaming in protest, but somehow they launched away from the station as it broke apart behind them, falling into the upper atmosphere like a dying comet from Earth. People saw the sky blaze with light and thought it was the end, but then they saw the Zorkai flagship shift its course, recoil from orbit, and drift backward, flames spilling from its side, and they knew something else, something stronger had arrived. Hope in the resistance bunker beneath the Andes. Commander Reyes, a grizzled old veteran who once believed the war was already lost, stood before a crowd of fighters watching the sky, tears in his eyes as he whispered, "They did it, she did it, Alara did it." Across the oceans, more voices joined the call, more cities rose, more outposts fought back, alien ships began to fall as coordination failed, leadership fractured, and the fleet scattered, trying to regroup, trying to understand how a small world could strike so hard so fast. Inside the flagship, Vale Tor breathed heavily, armor cracked, blood dripping from a wound on his shoulder as he stared into the void. His pride shattered, his command broken, but his hatred still burning. "She will pay," he growled. "She will kneel." But deep within him a whisper rose, one he could not silence, a whisper of doubt, a whisper that said, maybe, just maybe, the humans were not like the others. Maybe they were not just another weak species to be crushed. Maybe they were something else. As Stormalara's ship re-entered Earth's atmosphere, trailing fire and sparks, but intact, she looked down at the planet below her, cities burning, oceans calm, mountains still strong. She saw a world that had not given up and smiled despite the pain in her bones. She opened a channel to all. Night fell across the war-torn lands of Earth, but it brought no silence, only the steady rhythm of resistance rising from the ashes. Where cities once stood, now stood strongholds. Where broken homes once crumbled, now stood barricades glowing with defiance. The people had awakened, and their eyes turned to the sky, where the enemy bled fire in a hidden valley deep in the eastern highlands of Europa. Base Sigma for burned brightly under artificial lights. Engineers moved like shadows, welding armor plates to gunships, loading plasma cells into hoversuits, preparing machines of war that had once been forgotten, now reborn through urgency and desperation. At the center stood Alara, her body bruised, her face calm, as she studied the tactical screen reports flowed in from every continent. Resistance units, once isolated, now linked by Seraphim's ghost network, launched hit and run strikes across alien zones. They knew they could not win every fight, but that was not the point. The point was to bleed them, confuse them, remind them that humans were still here, still breathing, still ready to rise. Juno entered with a datapad in hand and a fresh scar across his cheek. "They're pulling back from the eastern defense line," he said. "Veiltor's forces are trying to regroup over the Atlantic. The flagship's damaged core is still unstable, but they're protecting it like a wounded king." Alara nodded. "Then we take it, we break what's left of his pride." Hannah leaned over the console, pointing at a glowing arc of ships forming a defense wall. "They've built a shield field around the flagship. Any direct assault would fail before it even reaches the hull, unless we find the power source behind the shield and shut it down. We don't have time to search, we need bait," she said, then paused, her eyes narrowing as an idea sparked. "We give them something they can't ignore." The plan formed quickly, each piece dangerous, each step reckless, but it was the only way, and the only time to strike was now, while their enemies still reeled from the last blow. Before he found the courage to strike back across the hills behind the base, ancient relics of Earth's defense sat buried, long-range missile silos, nuclear launchers, prototype beam weapons half forgotten in cold storage. Seraphim calculated potential from old files and found one named Echo Lance, a kinetic rail weapon designed to strike from orbit using gravity itself as a weapon, decommissioned due to risks, now reactivated and aimed once again toward the stars. "We draw their fleet with the Lance," Alara said. "We fire it from orbit. They'll divert all energy to the shield, and when they do, we send in the strike team, cloaked, drop using the ion dust from the explosion as cover. The second the shield drops, Seraphim hacks the flagship core and disables the weapon systems. We move fast, we hit harder, and we don't stop until Veiltor is down." Hannah frowned. "Even if the shield drops, they'll still have guards, drones, internal defenses. And that ship is a fortress. Are we ready for that kind of fight?" "We've been in that kind of fight since they landed," Alara said. "We just haven't taken it to them yet." 3 hours later, the sky above Earth lit with a thunderous blaze as Echo Lance Launched from the stratosphere, a blazing trail of white flames streaking across the horizon, alien ships scattered, breaking formation, confused by the ancient weapon's signature. It was too fast to intercept, too unpredictable to ignore, and as planned. The shield around the flagship pulsed brighter, absorbing the full blast inside the flagship veil. Tor stood at the heart of the command chamber, his arm in a cast, his eyes glowing with fury. He watched the impact on his screens, felt the tremble beneath his boots, and shouted for defenses to hold, for warriors to stand, for humans to break. But he did not see the shadow moving in the storm below. From above, cloaked in ion fog, Alara and her team dropped from orbit, silent and swift, seraphim guiding them through the blinding debris pulses. They landed like ghosts on the outer hull of the flagship, magnetic boots clicking onto scorched metal, their suits adjusted to zero gravity, their weapons locked and ready, breath slow, eyes sharp. They moved across the hull, cutting into the service hatch, bypassing alarms, and slipping into the beast from the spine inside the ship. Alien hulls twisted like veins of obsidian, pulsing with green light. Sentry drones drifted through the air, scanning for movement. Weapons armed to vaporize intruders on sight. But Seraphim's interference caused flickers, confusion, false echoes that made the drones hesitate just long enough for the team to strike. One by one, the corridors cleared, each room secured, each step forward a gamble. Juno took point, Hannah mapped the paths. Alara moved like wind, guiding them to the core chamber, where the shield's heart pulsed with energy. They reached the chamber, guarded by a squad of elite Zorkai warriors, tall, armored creatures with eyes that burned like stars. They hissed in their own tongue, raising blades of plasma, and surged forward. What followed was not battle, but fury unleashed. Alara rolled beneath a strike, blasted two warriors before rising into a spin that dropped a third. Juno blocked a blade with his rifle and countered with a burst that melted armor. Hannah ducked behind a panel, rerouting energy to overload one warrior's shield and sending him crashing into the wall. The last warrior roared and charged Alara head on, but she caught his arm twisted, stepped inside his guard, and fired point blank. His scream echoed in silence as his body fell into shadow. Core secured, Hannah said, breathing hard. Seraphim patching into the system, now disable protocol. Running on the main screen above Earth, the Zorkai fleet began to drift uncoordinated, their shield network blinking offline, their signals scrambled. Seraphim's voice echoed through the human resistance channels. Now is the time, all units strike. Now on Earth, the people rose like waves. Every city that could fight did, every hand that could lift a weapon raised it. Resistance forces launched their final assaults, not to survive, but to win. Inside the flagship, Alara pushed forward toward the command bridge, where Veil Tor waited alone, surrounded by fire and smoke. The last line broken, his guards fallen, his empire crumbling. She entered slowly, her weapon lowered, her voice comets over, call your ships back. And it now. Veil Tor laughed, a sound filled with rage and despair. You think I will kneel? I am Zorkai, I am conqueror, I will die standing, then die, Alara said. But before she fired, he lunged faster than expected, claws swinging. She dodged the first strike, but the second caught her shoulder, sending sparks from her suit. Pain shot through her chest, but she stood firm, fired once, twice. His armor cracked, his blade dropped. He fell to one knee, and she stood over him, weapon aimed, heart steady, weak. The stars above Earth were no longer silent. They carried echoes of fire and memory. Wreckage drifted across the void like scars of a battle. Still fresh, broken alien ships floated in orbit, their glowing cores pulsing with dying light. Fragments of the great Zorkai fleet reduced to twisted metal and silence. But deep within the black, there was still movement, and it was not human. Alara stood at the edge of the skyport deck, her eyes scanning the horizon. Far below, the Earth was still burning, smoke rising from cities that refused to die. Though the flagship of Veil Tor was gone, though his body lay cold in orbit, the war was not yet over. The Zorkai had lost their commander, but not their will to destroy. Across the human command center, voices overlapped with static and urgent signals. Seraphim processed incoming data from every hemisphere. Every surviving outpost reported the same message: the Zorkai were regrouping, one final assault, one last attempt to wipe Earth from the stars before retreating into darkness and building again. Juno entered, holding a tactical map, his face pale under the flickering light. They're forming a spear formation, targeting the continental rift. If they break through there, they can collapse the mantle, destabilize the entire region in minutes. They want to scorch the planet and leave nothing. Alara took the map and scanned the movement patterns, calculating every point of pressure, every moment of delay. She nodded grimly. Then we hold the line right here. We stop them at the rift, or there's nothing left to fight for. Hannah stepped forward. This is not just another battle. If we lose here, we lose everything. And even if we win, we might not survive it. Then we don't fight to survive. Alara said, we fight to finish this. Resistance units across the globe mobilized, every last ship, every pilot, every soldier still able to stand prepared for one final defense. Veterans joined hands with rookies. Engineers turned cargo haulers into missile carriers. Doctors became medics in the field. Every corner of humanity rose together one last time above the rift. The sky turned black, not from night, but from the shadows of Zorkai carriers. Their new leader, unnamed, ruthless, broadcasting a single message to the surface over and over: humans must kneel or burn. The voice echoed like thunder, but no one on Earth listened. Not this time, not anymore. In the deep caves beneath Europa Base, ancient machines awoke. Once more, gravity wells, seismic stabilizers, fusion cannons, all activated by Seraphim, with code passed down from long-dead architects. Earth was not without teeth, and now it was ready to bite back. Alara led the front command from the upper ridge, wearing her damaged battle suit, still stained from the fight. With veil tore her rifle in hand, her voice clear through every comm line. This is not just a defense, this is a promise. We made them bleed, now we break them. No mercy, no surrender, no fear. From the north, the Zorkai forces surged, waves of them crawling across the sky on black wings, walkers with legs like mountains slamming into the crust, drones swarming like insects around human craft. But the defenders did not break. They met them head-on with fire and fury. Juno piloted a mech Strider through the center field, blasting drones from the sky with rail fire, kicking aside crawlers with armored feet. He laughed through the chaos, not from joy, but from rage, from defiance, from the belief that even death was better. Then kneeling, Hannah moved between units, coordinating strikes from the rear, launching shock pulses into the enemy lines, watching towers fall under the weight of precision and teamwork. Every second she bought gave Earth one more breath, one more heartbeat above them. The last of the orbital guns fired until their cores melted, metal raining down like burning tears. The air filled with smoke and screams and thunder, but still the line held. Then came the final wave. A Titan-class Zorkai war beast descended from the carrier, its body a tower of armor, its weapons enough to level mountains. It roared across the land, crushing bunkers beneath its feet, targeting the rift gate with a cannon larger than any tank. The defenders turned their weapons, but nothing stopped it. Shells bounced off its hide, plasma beams only slowed it. Alara saw it from the ridge and knew this was the moment, the breaking point, the place where the line either held or vanished forever. She called to Juno, I need a route to its core. It has a weak point somewhere. I can hit it, but I have to get close. That's suicide, he shouted back, but he scanned the Titan anyway, finding a joint near the back where armor plates separated during recoil. There's a gap there. 10 seconds during cannon charge cycle. That's your window. She looked to Hannah. Cover me with drones and pulse fields. I'll move through the wreckage. Seraphim, I need every ounce of power in this suit, and I need it now. Confirmed, the voice replied. She ran, then faster, then thought, jumping from ledge to ledge, moving like fire, dodging blasts that turned steel to ash. Her suit burned at the edges, but she did not slow. She reached the base of the Titan, climbed its leg like a spider, dodging sentry bursts. Its cannon began to glow, charging for the final strike, aimed directly at the rift. 10 seconds, the voice of Seraphim said. Now she launched herself forward just as the plates opened. Her rifle locked, and she fired the round. A fusion-tipped shell spun into the gap, hit the core, and ignited the charge. The Titan staggered, its cannon blinking, its systems scrambling, its voice roaring in pain. Then came the blast, not outward, but inward, a collapse of its own power, crushing it from within. The beast fell like a building into the earth. The ground shook, but the rift held. The Zorkai forces saw it fall and began to scatter. Without command, without the beast, without hope, they turned their ships for the stars and fled, broken, defeated, leaving smoke and silence in their wake. The sky cleared. The battle was over. Alara stood on the ridge, looking down at the wreckage. Her armor cracked, her body bleeding, her eyes tired, but still burning with fire. Juno limped up beside her, smiling through bruised lips. You always did like the hard way. Hannah joined them. Drones circling overhead were getting global reports. They're gone, retreating from every zone. Even their home signal is fading. They won't return. Not soon, not ever. Alara looked to the sky once more, too. The stars now bright and unbroken. Then let them remember this day. She said, "Let them remember Earth did not kneel in the days that followed. Fires were put out, cities were rebuilt, names of the fallen were carved into stone, and stories of the last stand passed from voice to voice, from screen to screen. No one forgot the day the sky burned or the woman who stood at the center of it. And when the stars called again, when ships rose from rebuilt ports and explorers reached for the edge of space, they carried those names with them, and a single vow: no matter how far they go, no matter who they meet, they would never kneel again, because the war was not just for Earth, it